Sarah, glad to have you on the podcast today. Host of Brain Driven Brands. If you have not listened to that yet, well, don't pause this episode, but at the end of this episode, go give her episode or her show a listen. Give it a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple. Which channel do you care about more, Spotify or Apple?
That's a good question. I should ask my producer.
Okay.
Apple, I guess. I don't know. I have to pick one.
Brain Driven Brands, great podcast, focuses on consumer psychology. If you are ever driving or sitting in a waiting room or just have time, listen to it. It's a great thought-filled podcast. Always give a good takeaway. I recently shared with the team the episode with you and Barry Hott on founder videos and thought that was a very good episode.
Oh my goodness. Barry's so funny too, because he's just like a full force. I love Barry because he's kind of like just bull in a china shop. He's just like, I'm coming in.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to get his take compared to Nate, because Nate is much more like, what would you call it? He's a precision guy, right? Very focused. I feel like Barry's that type of guy that he hits on things so quickly and easily because he's not worried about what the result is going to be. He just wants to test.
Yeah.
So, and I just like his personality. Barry's just funny.
If you haven't listened to the episode, goes to it. I love the idea. You brought together two people that disagreed on something on Twitter and then let them talk it out in a good way. There needs to be more of that. There's a lot of beef on the D2C Twitter space. We need to let people talk stuff out and see how it goes. Well, we're going to be talking today about where you see creative strategy going in 2025. But before we do that, let's just kind of talk through the past 12 to 18 months. There's been a lot of ups and downs and turnarounds. It's been a roller coaster the past year for D2C brands, for agencies. Where do you think there's been some shifts with creative strategy and paid media over the past 12 to 18 months?
Oh my gosh, I could talk about this for hours. Creative strategy is one of the toughest roles I think I've ever seen developed in an industry. And I've been in like all kinds of different industries for a very, very long time. Marketing, obviously, in particular. This is odd, though, because we saw kind of this rise of like iOS 14 come up. All of a sudden, we couldn't track anything. We had a need for people who understood data and understood creative, basically content, right? We needed content minds that understood how to make content that would get sales performance-wise. Difficult part about this is I thought for sure as soon as this role started to develop, which was like basically right after iOS 14, all of a sudden UGC got big and we needed creative strategists. I thought, predictive wise, that it was gonna progress the same as media buyers did, the same as like CMOs did, the same as copywriters did. I thought for sure it was just gonna become a mainstay in the actual industry. So far, from what I've seen, it is incredibly difficult to find a good creative strategist. There's not a lot of them. Like there's very few actual, true, real creative strategists in the industry. And the ones who are here are just struggling heavily because there's no education. There's no furthering like training for any of these people. There's nowhere to go to get better at your job as a creative strategist. So all of them basically have to make it up as they go. It's a weird role. And it's one that it's a growing demand. Very, very little solution. Like there's just not a lot of them.
Yeah. And I know we've had a previous episode talking about what you felt went into being a creative strategist. I mean, it's copywriting, it's consumer psychology, it's having enough design comprehension to be able to lead others to make designs that way. There's a lot of pieces that go into it there.
Oh, so many. And it's one of those roles that, like I said, has just kind of morphed. Originally, I think the creative strategist was, I guess, leaned towards ideation. So we first started with having our creative strategists just come up with ideas. We just need more ad ideas. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, on top of ad ideas, can you also track metrics for the things that you're putting into the account? On top of metrics, can you also give us like a good idea of strategy, right? CBO, ABO, cost caps. Can you figure that out for us? On top of that, can you also figure out format? Can you also go get influencers and like manage the creators? Can you tell the media buyer what to do? Can you tell our like copywriter what to do? So in my interpretation of this, the creative strategist has almost turned into basically like I don't know what you call it, like a CMO.
I was just about to say a CMO with deep channel knowledge.
Yes. It's like a very specific CMO. It's like a digital CMO is what it would be, right? Or a performance CMO is technically what they are. So they're not really creative strategists.
Not a chief creative officer, but like a channel creative officer, like somebody that knows the channel well enough. And I like that you said CMO. you were saying, and this client communication as well. That's another thing they
Yes.
also now have to do.
Reporting, client communication. They also have to present ideas and help the client understand why we're going this direction. So they're in sales a little bit, and they're also in like client management a little bit. They're also in project management a little bit. So this is the interesting part about this is I've been talking to a lot of CMOs about this particular role. One of which last week said, this is the toughest part about being in this particular industry in this spot right now, because we are noticing that people are duplicating roles across
Mm.
the board. Media buyers are also copywriters. Copywriters are also graphic designers. The only ones who really aren't in the weeds like this, where they're wearing multiple hats at this point, are probably the founders, because the founders just they sit at the top because they're supposed to innovate, right? Like the brand owners are still solidly brand owning. Some of them, not all of them, obviously, some of them. But for the most part, though, everybody else in operations seems to be doing each other's jobs a lot. So we're like blending. And I
Mhm.
don't know why that happened or what that means for the brands, because if you get someone with a specialization in copywriting who's now also required to like build ads, well, how does that affect their job and the quality of output that they generate? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what it means.
Who was responsible for, I'm just thinking like the pre-internet days when it was coming up with advertisements there. Like, what did
Yeah.
that team look like, and how's it different now?
So different. So different. So I worked in a company that was big. They made water testing instruments, which was like a weird company to be in. But I was on the basically the marketing communications team, and they had very distinct roles for people. Like
Mhm.
couldn't go outside of your box, basically. And they had it set up to where the people at the top, there was obviously one guy, CMO at that level. He had direct reports that were basically project managers. The project managers then had graphic designers, copywriters, photographers beneath them. Nobody did anybody else's job. Everybody was like, today, the only thing you're doing is designing stuff, or the only thing you're doing is like photo shoots, right? Nobody would kind of bleed into everybody else's work. I think by naturally, just by way of the medium, right? Or like where we actually do our jobs, which is online, it happened naturally.
Mhm.
If you're a media buyer and you see copy going into your ad account that just doesn't sound right, you're just going to change it because you have control over what happens to that copy next, right? Even though the copywriter spent a good couple hours writing that, if they give it to you, you are now in control of it. And this is the toughest part is once these entities, once these marketing campaigns leave your hands and go to the next person in line, all of a sudden you're not in charge of it anymore.
Mhm.
So I think it's happening naturally. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's a good thing. I can't tell how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Jaguar rebrand. We'll know in a couple of years,
Mhm.
or we'll know in time. How do you
100%.
see creative strategy? And I'm a college dropout, so if it's already there, you just tell me. But do you see creative strategy being a university degree or course in the future?
Oh, I do not. I
Okay.
don't think the colleges will grab onto it. I think mostly because I don't this is going to sound bad. Sorry, colleges in advance. I don't think the colleges know enough about the industry to be able to provide solutions for it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in the college group that at least I've interacted with even knows any of this is happening. They have digital management courses, and they have like courses for understanding Facebook advertising, advertising in particular. They don't have a course, as far as I know, on media buying
Hmm.
or content generation or ad work in general that I've seen. So
Yeah,
I don't think so.
it's tough. I mean, it's tough to believe that textbooks and all of that could keep up with the
Mm-mm.
fast pace that things are changing.
Just I don't know. I mean, as a college, you'd have to be incredibly plugged in to the industries to know
Hmm.
what's going on. And to your point, we got legacy brands like Jaguar who are like completely out of touch with what's happening in the industry. Uh, eh, Big brands who are in the industry can't even get a handle on it. What are the universities going to do? Like, I don't think that they're going to be able to keep up with this unless they prioritize somebody on their staff to go look at what's happening in the industries and build curriculum around it. But to your point, I think it'll be outdated by the time they create it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. That's where we are. What is, there's going to be probably a couple, but what is one major shift you see coming with creative strategy in 2025?
Yeah. Oh, I think the creative strategist will probably always be inside the businesses. That role will always exist. But I think, like I said, their role is morphing. They're becoming I don't even know what you call it, like an apprentice to the CMO, right? As you said, like a channel specific CMO. So I have a feeling that this particular role is going to become I guess more solidly placed on like the C-suite level. I don't know that it will be on the same plane as like media buyer, project manager. I think they'll probably move up a little bit and become more strategy focused and less production focused, if that makes sense.
Hmm. So kind of
Yeah.
like a mix, like a CMO, a growth strategist,
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
types of things.
Yeah. I well, and either that there's one of two routes. Either they start to become more like growth strategy, right? Like growth marketer, or the role just dissipates entirely and the responsibilities of the role goes back to the CMO. Because that's where it used to sit, was
Mhm.
with CMOs and growth strategists. Like if you're a growth marketer, that's kind of what you were supposed to do, is figure out, here's all of the financial whatever of the business. How do we get to where we want to go? Here's what I want to put in place to get there.
Mhm.
So it's possible that we may not have them after 2025. I don't know.
Interesting. Well,
Depends on what the
there,
brands do.
there's been some updates on the content front as well. I don't know how much it's affected you, but the FTC updates that recently
Yeah.
happened, where now you're supposed to acknowledge that it's an ad. We're currently, as an agency, testing out what hook rate and hold rate look like if it does or
Mm,
doesn't say that, and just trying to see
interesting.
how it impacts that. So we'll
Yeah.
definitely be reporting some data on that. But
Fascinating.
UGC has been a big focus for companies and for agencies for the past couple of years with Facebook ads, with TikTok ads. Do you think UGC will continue to dominate going forward in 2025, or do you think other types of content will prevail?
I am noticing a little bit a slowdown in the UGC industry in
Hmm.
general, right? So we had volatility for like 2 to 3 years where we were trying to figure out who should we get in, what type of creator should we use, who are the best creators in the industry, those type of things. We were just messing with things. We were just like, see what happened. Now I'm kind of noticing that UGC still works, but it's becoming more of I don't know what you'd call it, more of like a foundational piece than it is something that's going to like boost sales. It doesn't seem, in my experience, it doesn't seem like UGC is the thing that you need to try this year because it's gonna boost the account or like it's gonna drastically increase business. It's becoming a default format is what it's
Hmm.
becoming. Same as statics, right? Same as any sort of graphics, same as carousels. Like all of those have been default format for a long time. UGC is starting to just kind of go that direction, mostly because the marketers used it a lot.
Hmm.
We pumped out a lot of UGC between 2020 and 2022. And then in 2023, 2024, I think the consumers just started to be like, all right, well, there's no interesting UGC. There's nothing different about what I'm seeing. So I'm just going to skip it, skip it. Now, some people are going to come back and be like, Sarah, I use UGC and it works every time. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's more the fact that it's not going to be this like monumentally big driver of business, I think, in the ad accounts anymore. It's just going to be a mainstay.
Yeah, and I'm curious on, I've seen a lot of people recently talking about the importance of organic social
Yeah.
and kind of
Oh my God.
making paid content that looks like organic content so that it can perform that way. We, as an agency, recently submitted for that foreplay contest for best
Wow.
creative, and we had a UGC creator. We also had somebody else. We did it for a T-shirt company called Thompson Tees, where
Mm,
they have things in the shirt so that you don't sweat through the shirts for people with
mm.
hyperhidrosis that like chronically
Yeah.
sweat. And so we wanted to create a captivating ad, a
Yeah.
UGC ad that would really capture attention top of funnel. And it's a product that helps people live their life because they sweat so much they stop
Yes.
going on dates, they stop doing
Mhm.
this and that. So we got somebody with a fear of heights and got them in a plane to go skydiving in the shirt, and
Crazy.
that
Oh
was the
my
UGC ad. Was
God.
like a whole kind of Mr.
Oh, I
Beast
love
style
this.
like challenge,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
That's where I see UGC going, not necessarily making people jump out of planes, but making it
Yeah.
more like situational and more
Yes.
entertaining with a good CTA or good capture at the end of it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think that I could talk for hours on organic side because like I don't think the brands really understand that if you have a good organic presence, the ads you run will drastically outperform anything you've ever seen before
Mhm.
just based on the fact that people have seen you. Brands are built from familiarity. If people have seen you, they're going to like you. If they like you, they're going to search you out and share what you have. And the nice part about that is you don't have to do anything for yourself, right? You don't have to market really all that much. Marketing is 100% a patience game. I think people misinterpret marketing and sales, and that's a delineation we need to make.
And I think there's times where Facebook ads can be more sales than marketing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And that's what UGC was for 2 straight years, was sales. It was
Mhm.
just sales content is all it was, which again becomes fatigued in the consumer group. You can't use sales focused messaging and sales focused language for too long. Otherwise, people just get tired. Like they don't love to be
Mhm.
sold to for long periods of time because they can spot it. They know that you're just trying to like get some money from me. So from the UGC that you ran, which was really interesting, Mr. Beast did some really good things for content because he showed people that you don't actually have to be relatable at all, right?
Mm.
Which is interesting because Sarah preaches relatability all the time. Make relatable content. I truly believe that this is something that people miss out on when it comes to video format in particular. But Mr. Beast showed the opposite is also true, but only if it's like highly unrelatable, right? Somebody jumping out of a plane just to test and see whether they sweat through this shirt. That's unrelatable as hell because who's going to get in a plane on a daily basis in this shirt?
Mhm.
It's not going to happen very often. But it's interesting because now I need to know what happened in the story. So,
That's
yeah.
interesting. And sorry to cut you off. That's interesting. The
Yeah.
way, from my vision while creating it, the way we were looking at it is trying to find a emotion or a fear aspect everybody can
Mm.
relate to, which, yes, they
Ah.
wouldn't relate to jumping out of a plane,
Yeah.
but if someone mentions climbing a 15-foot ladder or a 20-foot ladder, or somebody mentions like
Yes.
hanging
Yeah.
off the side of a,
Yeah.
I automatically get that tight stomach feeling. I can automatically feel that, you know what I
Yes.
mean? But I could
Yes.
also see how you could say people wouldn't relate to like the getting in the plane part.
Yes, yeah. So in that respect, you're 100% right. So there's 2 pieces to it, right? First piece is like this is unrelatable in general. Same as like I cut a table in half with a toothpick, or same with like I got
Mm.
buried alive for 5 days. It's unrelatable as hell. The one piece of it though that I think spot on for you, people can relate to the fear part, right? People can relate to what the body is going to do, especially for those shirts in this particular situation. So if you're going to go what we call sensationalized content, right, where someone's jumping out of a plane, it's not a relatable experience for a lot of people. But the fear that that person's feeling is 100% relatable.
Hmm.
So when I say like, relatable content, non-relatable content, you got to make sure if you're going to sensationalize, make it something that's going to be at least, what's the word? At least sort of captivating, because then people will attribute their own fear to the fear that this person's feeling. So
Hmm.
yeah, you did great.
Interesting.
You did relatable, sensationalized content
Yeah,
is
appreciate it.
what you guys built.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Actually, I was got the inspiration after watching a Mr. Beast video, and then was just driving to go pick up food, and it just hit me. I was like, "Oh, that's exactly what we should do." I like
Smart.
how he does very
Smart.
good at making the most of every single second in his
Yeah.
videos. Like, there's never
Oh
a
my
down point in
gosh.
his videos.
Yeah. Well, and the guy spent a decade learning how to do it. People are
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, he's just so naturally." No, Mr. Beast actually spent 10 straight years posting 2 videos a week, basically. So
Mhm.
how many videos? I mean, thousands of videos that did poorly to learn how to make sensationalized content that's like somewhat relatable emotionally. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I love what he does. I wish that more people go study him because he's brilliant.
Yeah, he does
Yeah,
really good.
and smart.
Well, you audit a lot of accounts, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Mhm.
What are, as we're going into 2025, just kind of keeping the pulse on what people are doing correctly, but also incorrectly, so we can avoid that. What are some of the most common things that you see missed or happening in ad
Mm.
accounts when you audit them?
I am noticing that soft selling is doing better than hard selling this year, like at the end of the year
Okay.
in particular, which is odd. It's odd behavior that's going through the consumer group. I think this is primarily born out of the fact that Gen Zers are now starting to get online. So we're seeing a lot of these younger kids, somewhere between the ages of like 18 and 25, are starting to like pull into the actual consumption group, right? Millennials are still solidly holding on to like, I don't know, the wheel, I guess you could say, when it comes to what we do with the ads, because millennials are currently the largest like consumer group. But in general, I'm noticing that direct response in particular doesn't hit as well as it used to. We almost have to do multiple touch points of direct response before we see anybody purchase, specifically on the ad side. I'm starting to work with a few brands who are currently doing soft selling, basically, which is just we offer the option and just say, you decide if you want it or not.
Hmm.
Lot less CTAs, a lot less, what would you call it, persuasive language. We're not using as hard, I don't know, tactics going
Mm-hmm.
after these consumers. Whereas direct response used to be, here's your problem, here's the solution, here's the testimonial. You need to buy this. Go buy it. That was the kind of structure of it for a long time, for literally 10 straight years. Now, I'm not seeing it work as well anymore.
And I've heard on your podcast, you had an episode about generations and how you sell to different generations and how boomers act this way. Is that what is moving with Gen Z? Is more of kind of like a
Yeah.
defiant, let me figure it out for myself type mindset, or what
Yeah.
is that?
Well, the Gen Zers are interesting because they're one of the only consumer groups that I've studied that heavily prioritize individuality and
Mm,
what would you call it, like identity focus, right? So they're very focused on who they are, how I feel, but they're one of the just the most inclusive generations I've ever seen. Like they just so heavily crave community and belonging, and specifically shared interests with people that are similar to them, right? So Gen Zers are a little bit different than everybody else because they're dependent. Like they're very dependent people. They want to be involved in the process of everybody else's life. Whereas Gen Xers, very independent people. You notice if you're a Gen Xer or even an old millennial, you're like, I can do it. I can do it by myself. Like, let me decide. I'll figure it out, right? Young millennials and Gen Zers right now are almost becoming interdependent, right? Like they're like almost codependent people. So when it comes to like purchasing decisions and consumer behavior, uh, they're often making decisions with the opinion of somebody else. Like they almost can't make a decision unless they get a lot of feedback from people around them. So
hmm,
this changes almost everything we do as marketers because, again, we can't hard sell to them because they just won't be receptive to it because they need
mhm.
to get feedback. Is this a good purchasing decision? I'm going to go ask my friends first. I'm going to go ask my mom. I'm going to ask my sister. I got to get permission, basically, right, to see if this is going to be good for my life. So, and again, these are generalizations. There's outliers, obviously, in these groups, but for marketers, I think this is going to be important to realize that you might want to test soft selling in 2025, especially if you're marketing to younger audiences, because they're much more sensitive to that.
And just so everybody listening's on the same page for you, I think I'm going to assume, which is bad to do, but everybody knows what direct response is because we've been doing it so much for the past couple of years. But you
Yeah.
said less CTAs. Examples of soft selling?
Yeah. So in a soft selling environment, the CTAs won't be buy now. It will be find your color.
Hmm,
Check out like your, I don't know, like find your size, right? So you'll be an invitation to look at things more, less of a like, what's the word? A direction. So instead of saying, go do this, you're going to say, do you want to come and see more? That's the difference
interesting.
between those hard sell and soft sell CTAs. Because right now, everything says book now, buy now, purchase it, put it in your cart, shop now. Like it's just like go, 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 go. It's very direct,
Hmm.
authoritative is what it is, right? The ones that are working best for me right now, especially on landing pages, when we do any sort of like site-based CRO, we move over towards check out our colors or find your size. All of our conversion rates and click rates go up.
For all demographics or specifically for younger
Just
generations?
those younger ones I've
Okay.
noticed, just the younger ones. And obviously the only way to track that is to make sure that like what's coming off of your ads is accurate. Because
Yeah.
again, some of these products that I'm selling are only for the younger audiences or only for the older ones. So this is how we're tracking it. But yeah, in particular, seems to do better when we just offer an invitation instead of tell them what to do.
Interesting. Well, there's a key takeaway for anybody listening. If people want to get more key takeaways from you, connect with you, learn more about what you do, what's the best channel? We've already mentioned Brain Driven Podcast, but where can they connect with you?
Yes. So I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn at Sarah Levinger, basically anywhere you consume content. And then go check out tetherinsights.io. I'm doing a ton of psychology based work over there where that particular brand technically hasn't launched yet. I feel bad. I should probably launch it for reals on Twitter, but we're studying consumers using a bunch of different really interesting AI tools, basically just to help the brands cut costs and boost sales in particular using psychology. So
And is a book in the works for Sarah Levinger in
it
2025
has
or
been.
beyond?
A book has been in the works for like 4 years.
Okay, I feel like it's
Yes.
needed.
I know. I need to just sit down and do it is the thing. I need a ghostwriter or like a copywriter to help me sit down and like get my
Yeah.
thoughts onto paper. But yes, it's a good play. I should do that in 2025.
Well, everybody look out for that as well. Sarah, thanks for coming on as always.
Thank